I'm thinking about in our relationship down through the 17 years, I'm thinking about other relationships that we've been in relationship with or counseled or walked through. I'm thinking about crying. And I'm not even talking about physical tears, but I'm thinking about all of the times in my life that I have cried. That men cry without using their tears, women cry without using, and I'm blown away by the fact that we can be crying and not know that we're crying.
Yeah.
Marriages for grown folks. All right, what's going on, everybody? We've got company tonight. Our good friend, this has been my childhood friend for over 30 years. We've cut a video. We did one called How to Grow Up a couple of episodes ago in a different setting. And so you're going to see more of him. We want to introduce him. This is Brandon Vassol. So they all have on glasses tonight, so I decided to put some glasses on tonight too, but these are not real. God bless you. I want to first start off by saying, before we introduce him and get into the content tonight, just to share our heart on why we do marriages for grown folks. We always say we ain't got all the answers.
No, not at all.
But we want to share our experiences, failures that we have had down through the years to help you in your relationship or your relationship to be form without using some mistakes. So as less mistakes as possible. And so
use our mistakes as a reference.
Please. So we do these to provide information for you and your potential mate or your mate, wherever you fit at in that, and to also spark conversation and to give you information. I think I said information twice. So we want to just make sure that we speak freely from whatever has happened in our relationship, what we've learned, pitfalls, failures, successes, to ensure that your relationship has the best to come on, help me
to make it.
Best tools to make it. So I think this, she hates when I do it, but I think this is episode 23. I think this is Jordan. I think this is the Jordan episode. So who better, first episode of the new year, happy new year to everybody, to have our friend and brother on. We're actually, if I scream in my house, he can hear me. That's how close we are.
Yeah, we live close.
So you're going to see more of him,
right,
I promise you, in season 2. But anything you want to say?
I'm ready to get into the content. I'm excited. I think it's going to be good.
You bubbling. I think you bubbling over there. So
it's going to be a good one, y'all.
Yeah, my sister like to talk.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about attachment styles. One of the reasons why we felt that this subject was appropriate now is because there's a lot of relationships that are struggling. And I think that one of the reasons why we're struggling in our relationships is that we don't know what has happened to us. Not only do I think that we not know what has happened to us, but how what has happened to us is affected us and potentially affecting the other person and the relationship as a whole. So tonight, what we want to do is go over attachment styles and really deal with what they are and kind of how they're formed, so that you in your relationship as an individual can be better informed on which one you lean more to versus the other. We will, in this episode, provide a link for you to take an assessment of attachment styles. It's a quiz. It's real short. It's free. You answer a series of questions, and at the end of it, it will map out to you what your attachment style is and kind of give you some further education on the cause of that, how it might have come to be, so that you can just have some tools under your belt for 2025 for the success of your relationship. And all the people say it. So,
amen.
Is there anything you want to say, anything you want to share that I'm missing out?
No, nothing that I want to share, man. I'm excited to be here with y'all, and I always look forward to a good hot conversation. So let's dive in.
This is part one of Be With Us. Make sure you follow him. We'll also put his social media handles.
Yeah.
He's one person in 3 locations: Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. So we'll make sure we tag his socials. He's got some real good content out. He's reloading and loading up. So I promise you, he's more the serious side than my presentation. But he cut up too.
We got to get in the game. We got to get in the game.
So tell us, let's start here, B and Brittany. What is an attachment style? What are we talking about when we say attachment?
If I was to boil it down, it's a psychological framework that kind of gives you a concept to practically understand how you emotionally connect, not only with yourself, but with other people. And it's mainly formed and developed, in your adolescent years, whether it's your parent, your caretaker, whoever it was that you were raised around, that will model themselves how they attach and are emotionally connected with people.
We did, actually, you conducted a marriage group. It was 2 or 3 years, maybe 3 years ago.
A couple years back.
And we participated in the group that he put on. And the major topic of that entire marriage group was about 6 or 7 couples was attachment style. And I was telling him before we started, I had never heard of attachment styles, didn't know what it was, didn't know the origin or anything of the sort. And so a bomb, an explosion of aha really hit me, like, this is the reason why I respond, I react, she responds, she reacts. So that information on how we attach to our parents, what we got from them, what we missed from them, was just like this makes sense. So, okay, give us an example of how an attachment can be formed. So, like, I think the lady, you remember the lady who did the workbook? What's her name?
Yeah, her name is Dr. Chin, I believe.
Dr. Chin.
But don't quote me on that.
I think that's right. We'll fix it if we necessary. But she said in the book, and you mentioned in the group, that there's a child that's crying in the crib, and the child is fed. You remember it? Tell us. I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, an example that she gave was, let's say you have an infant and they're in their crib. They've been fed, they've been changed, but they continue to cry even after the mother checks on them. So she sees the diaper's good, she sees they're fed, and after that, she thinks that child should be okay. But the child continues to whimper and whine because they are wanting the warmth of the mother, the connection. And if that child is left to figure out how to soothe on their own without the help of their mother, then they develop an anxiousness because they believe that even though my basic needs may be met, my emotional needs were not. And so now I have to fend for myself and I can't depend on someone else to help me with that.
So anytime you get ready, I'm thinking about in our relationship down through the 17 years, I'm thinking about other relationships that we've been in relationship with or counseled or walked through. I'm thinking about crying, and I'm not even talking about physical tears, but I'm thinking about all of the times in my life that I have cried. That men cry without using their tears, women cry without using, and I'm blown away by the fact that we can be crying and not know that we're crying. So give me an example, give us an example of what it looks like for an adult to have all of their immediate physical needs met, but emotionally crying. Give me 2 examples. Let's do a man and a woman.
I think for both sexes, y'all be out there and you workaholics. So all you do is want to go to work and get the bag. That is a way of telling us you have an unmet need, because there's a lack of balance, not only with your work, but you should also have some recreation or an outlet outside of that. But you're constantly going to work. And a lot of times that can be attached to what you didn't hear as a child. So you may have cleaned the garage, but your daddy said it'll never be good enough. You know, you may have cleaned the house, but your mama said you can do better. You know, you missed this spot. And you constantly are reinforced with negative affirmations. As you get older, you start to chase after that pat on the back from something else. And so workaholic, you know, going to work constantly and never taking time to refuel your emotional needs because you're trying to find that approval.
Yeah, that's good.
Have you ever been a workaholic?
I have. You trying to come from?
I'm just asking. How did you come out of that?
I read a book called The Power to Cure Codependency.
I can't listen. We need to put the link to that book in there.
Yeah, we drop it. We dropping jewels.
We've come across some information, some content, some podcasts, some books over the years that have really just been mile markers to development. And so anything our growth and development, any book we know, any book we have in our repertoire, which are a few, we'll most definitely plug it, shout it out. We want you to have all of the tools you can have as possible to make sure that your relationship succeeds. So the courage to cure codependency was it was life altering for me. I think that what you said is so true about when you have that anxious personality type, the world views you kind of as this strength, like, oh, she's strong or he's strong. Oh, they got it. You know, they're independent. They're self-sufficient. But it's really our development as an adolescent taught us this is how I have to present because nobody's going to really show up in this space. So you look for everybody else to give it to you in a different way. You don't look for it traditionally anymore. So it's like, I'm not necessarily looking for this. It's like, oh yeah, you bomb, you strong. It's like, okay, that can be my pet. I'll keep moving. So that's how becoming a workaholic happened for me. I'm like, all right, I can be great at this. Let's keep climbing. And to that point, PSA, check on your strong friends.
Yes.
I think that the people in our life who present as if they have all the answers, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, that they just rise to the occasion in times of trouble. It is easy to overlook their cry because it looks aesthetically on the outside that they have it all together. But I know some strong people, and I got some two strong people sitting with me on this couch that just are tough. But and they will admit to this, as strong as they are very vulnerable and they'll cry at the drop of a hat. And so just check on the people that are in your life that look like they don't need anything because they're managing with all the resources that they have available, but they cry at night, just like the rest of us. And so I think that's a good point when you said about codependency. And then you mentioned this child having these needs, but crying and needing that connection. Okay, so let's say you're in a relationship with someone and they are crying out. They are behaving or exhibiting a behavior that they are unable to get to the root of. If I'm in a relationship with you and that's happening with you, what can I do to assist? What's my recourse? If I'm in a relationship with someone, let's say, and they're a workaholic, and I can see that it's taking a toll on them, how do I, without, dishonoring them, disrespecting them, intruding, or what's our phrase? Their conscience, transgressing their conscience. How do I help? How does the person who's with that individual who's crying, how do they help?
I think you can simply ask, why do you do that? I think the outcome is going to be based on that person's willingness. Okay, so we cannot change people. You cannot change a person's behavior. They have to make that decision on their own. So asking them, why do you do that? I've seen you do this over a period of time, and it's not only affecting you, it's affecting me because I don't get the time that I need from you because you're constantly at work. And I appreciate that you provide well, but emotionally I'm suffering because I don't get to spend that time with you. And so asking, why do you do what you do? And then getting curious enough to ask the question until you get the answer that you're wanting to
get. You said a couple of years ago, you dropped a nugget. He was talking about you really don't get to the core of a person's real root until you ask about 3 or 4
Five
whys.
whys.
Was it 5 whys?
Yeah, 5 whys.
So explain that, because I think that is key. Because
Yeah.
I know that, especially for men, I hear it more so from men than women, that they complain of the wife or the girlfriend or the baby nagging. So the way you just phrased the inquisitiveness really is, I felt this, I'm not in a relationship with her, but I felt disarmed the way he said it. Just, I feel like okay, the reason why, oh my God, I felt at ease. So explain the 5 whys and why we need that many whys to get to the foundation of what's really going on.
Yeah, so I mean, I learned that psychology during my time in the corporate space, like coaching teams. I think it was the president of Toyota. He was trying to find out, you know, what was the root issues of their assembly, you know, their manufacturing. And he found that he had to ask 5 times why in order to get to the root issue. And so that psychology is kind of like a golden rule in coaching circles, but it works in your individual relationships because it makes that person first feel like you're not asking to nose. You're asking to help or to try and disarm so that you can be an assistance.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's a way of demonstrating it is, I'm not going to leave this conversation until I feel like I have what I need to understand you better so that I can maybe show up for you.
That's good.
When you need me to.
That's good. I like it. I like it. Ask why.
And for those of you and those of us who have grown up in church, I'm thinking about, I can't help but to think about the component of sin. And maybe not the workaholic, but maybe alcoholism or whatever individual, based on their theological persuasion, might label as sin. I'm thinking how those of us who have grown up in church circles, in rigid environments, how we will see a behavior exhibited that may be sinful, but never ask what God, who was that said, how did you get here? Is it Deborah Cox? How did you get? So I think that. So I'm thinking about while both of y'all are talking, I'm thinking about how many of us have hit a brick wall because we couldn't get past the behavior to really deal with the pain that's causing the behavior. So when you say 5 whys, that individual is not trying to beat the individual down for the behavior, but I'm trying to figure out, baby, what's wrong? Where did this come from? Where in your life? So when we talk attachment styles, what you're saying, what I hear you saying is what we were missing emotionally from the person or the people who were supposed to be our primary caregiver. We missed it. Is it on them? Is it on us? How do we get to a deficit in our attachment?
Yeah, so as a child, the onus of that is on the adult because the child they're not equipped to provide what it is that they need. Exactly. Thank you, Brittany. So it's on that adult, but many times it's the root, not the fruit, like you were just explaining. So we continue in the same patterns that we were conditioned in, and we pass those on to those that we care for.
Because that's our normal.
Exactly. That is our norm. So that being said, that's kind of the reason that takes place and how that shapes and forms. I want to say this, when it comes to attachment styles, we often are trying to find what are our triggers and how can we avoid that in other people, as opposed to how can we serve you better by understanding your attachment style. And so I think just the mindset going into this that, you know, you would want to have is I'm gonna first do my own work.
Right.
Like I'm gonna look at myself first through my own lens. And then after I have settled into my own truths, then I can take that knowledge and try to attune myself better to this other person based on what I identify with them.
Right.
Now, why is that? Speak to why that is difficult. Because I know we've seen it ourselves in our relationship. It took us 5-6 years. Why is, again, speak to what he just said. Why is that so difficult for us to land on, let me point the gun at me?
Shame.
Oh my word. Oh my word. Come on.
I mean, to look at your insecurities, it's like a level of like, oh my God. Like, okay, this is the example that I like to give for women, right? So you carry a kid, your body goes through all of these changes. It's like an amazing experience. But then after, you're like, wait, this is not me. Like everything is trying to come back together, and you looking in the mirror like, I know I did something amazing. I just like birthed a kid, but like, how do I get back to the person I know myself to be? So think about life. You know, you make mistakes along the way, and they're lessons that we learn that can make us better and stronger. But sometimes it comes with shame too. Like, dang, why was I so dumb in this area? Why didn't I know better than this? And then why did I? So when the time comes to like look at yourself to be like, okay, wait, you kind of highlighting what's wrong with me because now we're in a relationship and you calling me out on it. I ain't by myself no more. I can't just like look the other way. You like, why do you do this? And why you do that? And I don't like it when you do. You become my mirror. So now I'm having to look at the scars that I've accrued along the way, and I'm having to adjust to the fact that, okay, wait, who you once were, you've evolved and changed. So now what are we doing with the present version of you? Like, how am I going to become better? And that can create a level of shame.
Can I tell y'all something that I admire about y'all though?
Yeah.
Being on the rough side of the mountain. Y'all see smooth polished stones,
Come on now.
but I've been there the whole time.
He's been here for the whole journey.
Y'all went from, you know, this friction to really a flow. And y'all are so different as people, just in y'all's personalities. But it formed this beautiful coming together because I saw y'all both step back from each other and say, hold it.
Yep.
You know, what is it that keeps me locking up with you that's in me? And what do I need to do to get this managed and under control so that we can go all in together and we can have a whole household? Because both of y'all brought in fatherlessness, mother issues, and y'all started having kids, and y'all said, we do not want to transfer this to our babies. I saw y'all make that commitment in y'all's journey, and so I admire that about y'all, and I want to affirm y'all in that.
Appreciate that. Wow.
I've seen it the whole time, y'all.
See, he said, listen, he's been, we'll do it later. We got to do
he
part
has
two.
Been in our life since before we got married. He was really a part of the journey.
He counseled us. So a major component to why we're still together is that if I was upset at her, I would call him and he would point the gun on me. If she called him, man, your brother, he would point.
Absolutely.
So like he's really been, I mean, so his testimony, he has a front row seat into this 17 plus years relationship. So we appreciate that. That means a lot. That means a lot. And,
to me, though, that's why attachment is so important. Because it was like, as I learned how you attach, because ours are opposite. But that's the yin and yang, you know, like literally when they talk about opposites attracting, it's like, okay, if we can understand the flow of how your strengths are my weaknesses and my weaknesses are your strengths, then we can become this cohesive circle. And really, that's the magic of it all. It's like, okay, wait. Just because I respond this way doesn't mean it's right. And just because he responds that way doesn't mean it's right. But I'm willing to see it from your view and you willing to see it from mine.
This, you said, I want you to speak to this. You said earlier, there is an advantage to marriage. Two's better. Say what you were saying earlier in regards to why it's really beautiful if the two can become one, and the benefit of having two, especially in this culture, in this day, economically alone, why two is better than one.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I think we often draw from our experiential knowledge, and then we frame concepts. So like marriage itself is a beautiful institution, and it's actually a tool of advantage.
Right.
Two are better than one. You can do more with 2 sets of hands, 4 hands. You know, you can do more with 2 brains rather than one.
Yeah.
And I think the snag and the snare of society today, it has people have brought their own traumas, and they've allowed that to inform marriage from an unhealed place. But if you get in marriage and you allow the restrictions, the restraints, the parameters that marriage puts around 2 individuals to really allow it to work out all that trauma. Because it can either flare it up or it can bring it to the top as a fire, and you start to scrape off the impurities that the marriage reveals. So I think that we have framed marriage out of our experiential knowledge rather than going and finding out what marriage was supposed to do for us as people. Rather than what we experienced in poor marriages, that we were actually responsible for the outcome. And I can say that myself, being married, divorced, and remarried now.
I was just getting ready to mention that.
So yeah, that's what I was speaking to. And I think that also having folks like yourself who are models that are brave enough to get in front of a camera and broadcast your private life to a public world is extremely important, because we have to redeem this institution.
And listen, one of the things that fuels our drive to do this, to be public about it, because we went through some mental, I don't know my business, but the beauty that we have experienced in marriage surpasses and this is seeds.
Far exceeds.
Come on. Far exceeds any anxiety that we initially had, because we want people to know this joy that there's a lot going on in the culture. There's a lot of trauma there's a lot of red flags as the culture. There's a lot of, but we want to shine light on some green flags and turn your red flag from a green flag. Can God do that?
And can I say this as well? I mean, also showing that your spouse can be your friend. Your spouse can be your business partner. Your spouse can be your spiritual partner. Your spouse can pastor with you, can do ministry with you. Your spouse can be so many other things than what we've traditionally seen it to be. And I think y'all represent a new generation of marriage.
Come on. That's good. That man said on live, how much is it going to you to take them pies? Okay, so let's there are 4 attachment styles. We're not going to get into the characteristics of each of those. That is for you to research your own.
The link in the quiz will give you more insight on it, and there is also a book that goes along with that.
Boom. It's a workbook. And there's also she did too, didn't she? A workbook.
And I noticed I gave all my books away. I was looking at my book before I came, and I gave them all away.
We got one. So there is avoidant attachment style, anxious, secure, and insecure. So when you take this quiz, it's going to pair you.
It creates like a grid.
Explain the grid, what they're going to see when they get that grid, if you remember.
I will fumble over that, but overall, it categorizes kind of where you've been towards each of those categories, and you'll find that you have a dominant and you have a less dominant trait when it comes to your attachment style.
So it's going to give you 2. Now, before we finish, I want you said earlier when we were talking, you talked about in your divorce, your first marriage, that it wasn't until you saw the effect on the divorce, how it affected your children. Speak to that, because I think and the reason why I want you to speak to it is because I think that so often we are in relationships. My friend and our brother said a couple of weeks ago that the state of the marriage has everything to do with the individuals that are inside of it, not the marriage as a whole. And so when we in our pain negatively assess marriage and speak negatively on marriage, it's really not marriage that is the problem, but it's the individuals who are participating.
The marriage ain't broke.
The marriage ain't broke. So when
Like,
we
we
come
gotta look
to
at
receive healing, wherever you receive healing at, if you're in a formal church setting or if you're reading, I think that one of the ideas that we have until we understand this, that it's individual first, is that we're asking God to heal or fix this inanimate object. And it doesn't work like that.
Right.
It's, I need to be healed.
God heal me.
There you go.
So I can show up.
So that I can show up in the marriage healed. And that other person praying that same prayer. And it took us years to understand that fundamental concept. God is not going to fix this as a unit, but he's going to heal us individually. So that means I gotta take the heat off of you.
Right.
And you gotta take the heat off.
The blame game has to pause. And you have to be like, okay, Lord, can you just help me adjust and correct the things that are broken on the inside of me?
Okay, so if you, I know you don't mind. I want to say it anyway. If you don't mind, share how you found out what your attachment style is and how it presented in the light of your divorce in reference to your children.
Yeah. So, I want to speak to folks who have been divorced, folks who may be considering divorce, and those of you who are even in a marriage where you are raising children and you are able to look and see yourself inside of them. What I noticed is that when I went through my divorce, I was going through a terrible time emotionally, and my children were as well. But I couldn't forfeit the father because the husband was hurting.
Right.
So I had to continue to show up for my children despite what I was feeling. And what I found in showing up for them was a greater level of empathy, but not only a greater level of empathy for them, but for myself, because I started to see how I show up in adversity and controversy and when things are going terribly around me. And I said, okay, so I'm going to go the extra mile, even though I'm tired, even though I don't feel like it. I'm emotionally depleted. I'm numb. I'm terrified. I'm scared. I'm seeing this look in my children's eyes, and it causes something to inherently rise up in me to say, okay, I got to find a way to soothe and comfort and be there for them and continue to give them what they need. And I found that was what I was missing. In my pain. And so I had to go in, and this is actually where I started to kind of stumble upon attachment styles, because I'm always kind of researching when something happens in my life. I want to know why, the 5 whys. And so I start looking things up and I start researching them. And one thing I found was attachment styles, and it helped give me some framework around being able to recover what I felt like I was losing in not only the divorce, but in the tearing away that I felt with my children as well. And I had to take a step back and say, okay, I can meet that need for them, but I also have that same need. And how can I, in my time of despair and my time of not having what I need, kind of build a emergency kit. And that's what attachment styles became for me.
That's good.
So had it not been for you seeing how they responded to it, what?
It may have left me in the dark around my own self-awareness. And so sometimes you need the heat of life. You need the devastation of life for you to become more aware and become more of who you were originally intended to be.
Come on now.
Our kids, like my kid, and sometimes I get emotional, and it will bring back memories that so like when our kids go through things that we experience negatively and we can recall how we felt at that age, it really makes us go back to that bookmark of that pain or that positive experience. And we can put ourselves, that's what I hear you saying. I had to put myself in my kids' shoes and it's okay, I remember how this felt when my mom, my dad, one of the kids came home one day and said something happened in school. That thing just went. I said, I might let Brittany take this one because I was hotter.
Like, me and John will say anything hysterical is historical.
That's a plug. Anything that you respond, say anything that you hysterically respond out of, it implies that there is something underneath what's happening.
And I still, even now, can get triggered. And I won't know until I'm triggered.
Yeah.
And then I will realize, oh, I'm triggered. So where is this coming from?
Right.
That is the question to ask. You should know, we should know why we do everything that we do, whether it's positive, whether it's negative. Someone said, CP said it years ago, that sin is an illegitimate response to a legitimate need. So the question is, what is the behavior communicating? When a child is crying, are they wet? Are they hungry? Is the diaper, back in the day they had the safety pin, is the safety pin poking the baby? What's happening? Because the younger we are, the more limited our vocabulary is.
Right.
So the advantage to having a extensive vocabulary is now we have a repertoire to choose from. But when we're frozen in pain, pissed off, and anger, and throwing stuff, and workaholic, we tend not to use our tool belt when we have an extensive.
I'm going to say this, right? To me, in 2024, we lack so much interpersonal. That
25,
people,
baby.
Oh, 25, right. It's the first, y'all. My apologies. But we're not trained or taught how to use that vocabulary anymore. And there's not a lot of people asking why. So although we're going through these experiences, seriously, there's nobody saying, how you doing today? You know, how you feel? What's going on? Yeah. Well, why? Why do you feel upset today? Where is that coming from?
Yep.
So it's like, unless you take the time to do that with people, that's just an area that's a deficit for a lot of people. It's not even age anymore. It's just people are not used to being able to communicate.
Get off that phone.
Now, there was something that spoke to me last night. We were hanging out with some friends, New Year's Eve, and a mother and child was over, and the baby, he's 3-4 months old, and she was breastfeeding him. He was asleep, but he was also breastfeeding. Well, when she sat him up, he would throw up. So she would put him back on. She sat him up, he would throw up. She said, you're not hungry. You just need the comfort of the attachment. Speaking to language.
Exactly.
Now, this is a 4-month-old who's receiving this. So can you imagine with him getting that type of care, how he's going to grow up and hopefully continue on in a secure attachment style. So you're right, to your point, having a language and even having a mind around what our children need can make better adults for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Ooh, can you see yourself in your children? Can you see your positives, negatives, your spouse?
Yes.
Even if you might not, even if you're not with that person, you can, that's your daddy. Now, usually they're your son. She'll say your son, your daughter, when it's something that they did wrong. Now, when they doing something good, it's our baby. But if he did something he shouldn't have been doing,
get your son.
Get your son. You need to get your son.
But like, oh, he just mine.
Yeah. So, last point, I think that how, to the attachment styles point, how we were raised really has a lot to do with not only how we see ourselves, how we see each other, but how we see the Creator.
Right.
And I know a lot of adults that are having to receive some healing in the area of their childhood because it's conflicting with how they see God because of the busyness of the parents. Now, listen, I'm going to say this, and we're going to cut this off. As you grow and as you receive healing, one of the things that will, and you said it earlier, and I believe it needs to be exhausted, that we've got to give our parents a break because they did the best that they could. And you can only say that when you see, you can't say that when you ain't had no kids. When you're around here smelling your own pee and you going on trips and you eating crab legs. But when you get some kids of your own, and you provide all of some of y'all, this is January 1st, 2025. Some of y'all kids already done broke them gifts. You bought them shoes and they done been outside in the mud. And you got to ask yourself, Brittany was saying, and you mad? But why are you mad? But we really bought it to fulfill something in us. Them kids don't know nothing about that smash cake that you bought them for their first birthday, but we did it for the pictures.
Yeah, so I had to get delivered around.
It's bad.
And a lot of times, to your point, not to cut in.
No.
But we often hinder our children by not allowing them to go without, by not allowing them to suffer and learn how to be resilient and pick themselves up off the mat. And so our overcompensation is not only a mask of us, but it's a hindrance to our children's progress as well.
Yeah, I had to get delivered, y'all.
I did as well. I had to learn.
Doing the most.
I had to learn.
And it wasn't helping them.
It wasn't.
I had to learn. I remember, you know, always kind of having a hard line with my children. And then I became extremely soft after my divorce. And I had to recover some of that. Okay, they are okay to experience life too. The good, the bad, the ugly. And they can learn how to develop within themselves a resiliency to come back when they fail. And not take that opportunity from them. Otherwise, they will grow up and they will be those that buy the cake and they smash and the baby don't know nothing about it, but you overcompensate it because of how it makes you feel.
So give your parents a break. They did the best that they could with the resources. And I really have a great deal of empathy for my parents, her parents, all of our parents, like, because when you are experiencing and you in the game, you like, man, it ain't easy. So give them a break, love on them. If they could have done better, I know that they would have. And so you got to deal with the hand that you were dealt. Any spades players, and I'm not a spades player.
Listen, I hung out with my mama this weekend, and she is a seasoned woman. And has a doctorate degree, well established. But I heard her say multiple times this weekend, I can do better and I'm going to do better. So to your point, give your parents a break, because when they see it, they see it.
And we all practicing.
We all practicing.
I ain't never been here before. I ain't never been in 2025 before. But B, thank you so much for coming by the crib.
It's my pleasure.
Absolutely.
Please don't make this the last time. This felt good.
This is part
felt
part
good.
one.
This felt good.
I'm only cutting it off because I don't know how much memory I got left. I want to make sure we have an official ending. But make sure you follow any of his pages. He's a wealth of knowledge, not just spiritual, but secular, mental health. We trust him for real.
I'm trying to come out of hiding, y'all.
And we're helping.
I like
him.
my private life, but I'm trying to come out of hiding.
We're trying to help him. Come on over here in the light, Carolyn. Come on in the light, Carolyn. So, B, we love you. Thank you for stopping by.
Love y'all, absolutely.
And y'all make sure you like, subscribe, inbox it to somebody. Shout out to everyone who has subscribed and who has. I run into people at work who said, I seen you, man, what you? So y'all are spreading the word, and we appreciate it. We've got some things coming up, but in the meantime, keep watching and keep loving on each other. Marriages for who?
Grown folks.
Grown folks.
Bye, y'all.